Gorgeous day, is it not? So all of you that are joining us through the technology of Facebook Live, watch the service and then go check out how nice it is outside. You don't want to miss it. But wait till after the service. That would be really great. Thank you for letting us join you and be a part of your morning. Is there anyone, well, in fact, I know this to be true, but there could be others, that is here for the very first time? For the very first time. Go ahead, raise your hand. Yay! Excellent. We're so happy to have you join us. My name is Reverend Dusty Ripplemeyer, and I am the spiritual director of this amazing, amazing community. If you don't know who we are a part of a larger organization called Centers for Spiritual Living, of which there are about 750 throughout the world. And we teach and follow the principles and practices of Ernest Holmes in his synthesization. Is that a word? I don't know. Anyway, he synthesized all of the great wisdom of the sages throughout lifetime, and all of the philosophy and all of the great religions into this teaching called Science of Mind. And we believe that there is one God, and that God is everywhere at all times. That God is benevolent, and is within us, not something that's outside of us, that's doling out favors or punishments, but actually very benevolent. It also is an aspect of this God is the creative process. In the beginning was the Word, and God created all of the worlds, everything that we see and don't see. And because we are created in the image and likeness of God, we too can participate in that creative process. So what we believe is that our lives are an outpicturing of what we believe. Our lives are an outpicturing of what we think. So if we're not all that happy with our lives right now, then all we need to do is to think a new thought, have a new belief. And that is well within our ability to do, that we have dominion over our minds. So we are very, very glad that you are here. We gather together to support each other on this spiritual path, and we do it in great love and in great joy. And we're just very happy that you've joined us, so thank you.
The reading for today is from Shafiq Asante. He says, inclusion doesn't call us to live in a fairy tale. It doesn't require that we begin with a new kind of human being who is always friendly, unselfish, unafraid, and never dislikes or feels strange with anyone. We can start with who we are, and it doesn't call for some kind of supergroup that can make everyone happy, satisfied, and healed. We must simply be willing to learn to get along while recognizing our differences, our faults and our foibles, and our gifts. This begins with the commitment to decency, a commitment not to behave in ways that demean others, even when it's unintentional. This work calls on each of us to discover and contribute the gifts through the common labor of building a worthy means. This work calls on each of us to create justice for ourselves and for the earth, through the ways we educate each other, through the ways we care for one another's health, welfare, and through the ways that we produce the things we need to live good lives together. In this common labor, we will find people we love and people we dislike. We will sometimes be astonished at our strengths and sometimes overwhelmed by our weakness. Through this work of inclusion, we will haltingly be new people capable of new and more human communities.
So welcome to those of you who may have just arrived in the sanctuary. Our theme for the month of July is open communication, and my talk title today is Open Arms for the World. Now, as I was preparing for this message, I looked at this title, just, the way that it's written. And right up at the top here, I'm just going to say, don't read anything into those capital letters. I'm really not yelling at any of you. Really, I'm not. This is just I think just see that it's a significant conversation. It's an important conversation, and so there's some capital letters involved. And the other thing that came up for me was this wonder around what would come up if I were to add a question mark to the end of it. Open arms for the world? And that little change created a question, actually really more of an entire dialogue within me about the need or about the possibility or about how we as individuals or collectively together could actually do this. Who do we need to be? What do we need to do to have arms for the world? What is the spiritual work that each of us has to do around this idea? As I sat with this question, it became very clear to me that the first place we have to start is with the spiritual truth that is believed by faith traditions across the world, and that is the spiritual truth that God is all that there is. That God is the very presence of unconditional love, of peace, of harmony, of compassion, and of unity. That throughout the universe there exists an all-encompassing, all-loving energy that flows through everything, uniting everything and everyone. There truly is no space, no place where God is not. It's also true that there is a great multiplicity of manifestations within the one, that each manifestation is an individualized expression, unique and different from all the rest. We have different cultures and different languages and different religions and different political affiliations and different ways of being in the world. We even have physical bodies that can seem to be a barrier to our deep and abiding oneness. All of these differences can appear to separate us. However, the truth is, the bottom line is, that divinity is at the center of everything, and through that golden thread of God's stuff, everything is one. One life, one love. One. This fundamental unity guides the universe. This principle, this underlying truth of everything, this idea of unity just simply guides the universe. There is one and only one heartbeat that connects the entire cosmos. There is an at-one-ment within nature, an at-one-ment, a unity and a harmony that is at the very core of life itself. Ernest Holmes says, God is all there is. God includes everything, all possibility and all action, for the Spirit is the indivisible essence and substance of all form. The universe depends on the cooperation and the interdependence of everything and everyone working together. Unfortunately, this is not always the place that we live our lives from. We are conditioned to ignore the unity, to ignore the interdependence. So instead of seeing unity, we see only our differences. We see only that which appears to separate us one from the other. We are conditioned to compete, to win at all costs, to live our lives comparing achievements, vying for resources, judging everything, and living in opposition to one another. Now, I know that's not anybody here. But the truth is, that is often the place that we're living our life from. We are intimately connected to all of creation, and yet we build fences, we construct barriers, we create labels, and we utilize infinite strategies to separate ourselves from one another. We only have to look at the world today to see that we're not living in unity, not living from our deep and abiding connection with each other. There's many places on the planet, and there's many situations that are happening right now in this moment that clearly point to an us versus them mentality. You know what I'm talking about? This is happening on a social front, a racial front, a political front, a religious front, a sexuality front, and many other different arenas. There's division and separation everywhere that we look. Our minds, our hearts, and our arms are closed off to many aspects of the whole. Richard Singer, in a book called Eastern Wisdom, Western Soul, says, "This is a lonely and frustrating existence. Creating your own little world and closing yourself off to everyone but the very few that you trust and approve of is not what this journey of life was meant to be. We are social beings who are intended to live in harmony with an interconnected purpose, a purpose consisting of the ultimate evolution of humankind. The ultimate evolution of humankind." So for me, the answer to open arms for the world is a resounding yes. Yes. It's necessary for our evolution and for the survival of the planet. But let's go back to the title. Let's remove that question mark and let's add a period, or even better yet, how about an exclamation point? Open arms for the world. Yeah. As we begin this next conversation, I think that it's important that we have a common definition of diversity, of exclusion, and of inclusion. Diversity means all of the ways that we differ. Some of these differences we are born with and we cannot change. But the bottom line is that anything that makes us unique is a part of the definition of diversity. Exclusion means the act of excluding. You know how much I love that. But that means to prevent someone from sharing or taking part in something. It means to shut out or to keep out or to leave out of consideration. Social exclusion is the process in which individuals or groups of individuals are systematically blocked from or denied full access to various rights, opportunities, and resources that are normally available to everybody else, and which are fundamental to the observance of human rights, to the observance of our spiritual birthrights. Alienation or disenfranchisement from resulting from exclusion it can just run the gamut from really anything. It can be because of a person's age, their social class, their race, their religious affiliation, their ethnic origin, their educational status, their childhood relationships, their physical abilities, their sexual orientation, their living standards, or their appearance. Anyone who appears to deviate in any way from the perceived norm of a particular population could be subject to coarse or really subtle forms of exclusion. So if exclusion means excluding people, then inclusion must mean including people. Safik Asante, who you heard from in the reading that John did, in an article called "What is Inclusion?" brings up a really, to me, very interesting caveat to this idea. He says, it is generally accepted that inclusion means inviting those who have been historically locked out to come on in. A weakness of this definition is evident. Who is doing the excluding? Who has the authority or right to invite others in? How did the inviters get in the first place? It is time we both recognize and accept that we were all born in. No one has the right to invite others in. Society will immediately improve at the point that we honor this truth. So this morning, I invite each of us to ask ourselves, does exclusion make any sense at all? Does being a different color, practicing a different religion, voting for a different political candidate, loving someone of the same sex, eating meat or not eating meat, having a pet or not having a pet, choosing not to go to college, being 21 or being 81, or hailing from a different country, or any other comparisons that we can make any one person better than anyone else? We are all children of God. All of us are special, but no one is more special than anyone else. We were all born in. The real definition of inclusion, then, is recognizing our universal oneness and interdependence. It is recognizing that we are all one, even though we are not the same. Inclusion means turning away from anything that excludes, and turning away from all of the social diseases that exclusion gives birth to, such as racism, ageism, sexism, able-bodyism, heterosexism, or classism, to name just a few. Inclusion involves bringing together and harnessing all of the diverse people, all of the diverse forces, and all of the diverse resources in the world in a way that is beneficial to the whole. Inclusion puts the concept and practice of diversity into action by creating an environment of involvement, an environment of connectedness, an environment of respect, where the richness of ideas, the richness of backgrounds, and the richness of the various different perspectives that are available are harnessed to create value. Individually and collectively, we need both diversity and inclusion in order to thrive. Inclusion is having open arms for the world. Dr. Ken Gordon, the spiritual leader of Centers for Spiritual Living, says, when we come together and appreciate that there is something to be learned and something to be gained from each of the individual manifestations of God, what we do is set ourselves on the pathway of conscious evolution, consciously moving towards the divinity and the greatness that we are. As we individually and collectively begin to live our lives from a deep awareness of who we all are, then we will recognize and value everything and everyone. We have to be able to see the person standing in front of us or the people on the news and know beyond a shadow of a doubt that everyone is a divine emanation of God. That they are, at their core, something that is inherently always good. Now, focusing on that inner goodness will give us the perspective that we need to be as present and to be as open as we need to be. To be as present and as open as is humanly possible. So the invitation is to treat everyone as the divine being that they are. See beyond the physical. See beyond our human perception. See into the center of every being. Because that's where our divinity lies. Every single one of us. We have to be able to see the person that's standing in front of us and the people on the news and think of that person as just like we are. With the same needs, the same fundamental desire to be happy and avoid suffering. With the same loneliness, the same fear of the unknown, the same secret spaces of sadness, and the same feelings of helplessness that we so often can feel. They're just like us. For communication, for real communication to be established, we must make a determined effort to see the person in terms of his or her own life. We have to be willing to listen to their story, to walk in their shoes, even if just for a moment. We have to be able to know that inclusivity does not simply mean one big happy family where people are pretending or wanting others to pretend that real differences of opinion or personalities do not exist. This idea of one big happy family where everyone loves everyone else is actually quite the opposite of inclusion. We cannot truly celebrate diversity if we're pretending that the differences do not exist. The reward of inclusion comes through the work of listening to one another, of looking to find and then understanding the differences and the commonalities, and then being able to bring it all together in a way that works for everyone. Ernest Holmes says, "The thing that shall establish unity is that each family group of the race shall respect the individual differences of others, while at the same time cooperating with them. We each have an individual part to play in the great scheme of things. And the most valuable thing that anyone can do is to be a little bit more certain each day that he or she is meeting life with a deeper understanding and sympathy for others, a greater sense of love." Can you just feel that world? What that would feel like, what that would be like? In a book called Creating a World That Works for All, the author Sharif Abdullah talks about some practical steps that we can take toward inclusivity. Now, these practical steps include, number one, practice diversity. Now, here he's not just talking about any old easy kind of diversity. You know, here you just saw our blessings of all faith, so you know that we honor all paths to God. Now, my guess is, for the majority of us, that's a pretty easy thing for us to do. What Mr. Abdullah, however, is talking about is to practice ideological diversity. Can we practice diversity by recognizing that everyone, even those that oppose our way of living, is important to the whole tapestry of life? Can we know that? Guess that's like where the rubber meets the road, right? Number two, practice inclusivity by eliminating artificial boundaries. This means to drop the walls around our heart. often we have them and we keep people out. We're the ones that put them up, and we're the only ones that can take them down. Number 3, stop thinking that we are separate or different. The invitation is to look for the common ground. And I promise you that if you look for it, you will find it on many different levels. At the very, very least, the invitation is to remember that each of us is a divine expression of God, with absolutely no exceptions. None. Number 4, interact with each other. In a month whose theme is open communication, it seems important to say that one of the most essential things that we need to do to live a life of inclusivity is to establish unafraid, heartfelt communication with others. From the outside looking in, we will never really understand one another. From the outside looking in, fear will always run the show. We think we know the people in our lives, but we will never really know them unless we make a point of really interacting with them. And I'm not talking about interacting through the email or through Facebook. I'm talking about interacting face to face, being in the same room with each other. When we begin to communicate from that deep sense of who we all are at our very core, and when we begin to tell the truth to ourselves and to others, then we will actually set ourselves and each other free. The freedom that Karen and Michael sang about. Number 5, stop letting fear dictate your actions. The invitation is to do the inner work, to find out what is back of your fear. Be willing to stop being defensive, judgmental, and reactive. We cannot heal the planet until each of us understands that what is within us, what is within our thoughts, within our stories, within our beliefs, is that which creates our fear. Things in form cannot create that. It's what's in here that creates that fear. Moving beyond fear might be the single most important thing that we can do for ourselves and for the planet. It is the only way that we're going to be able to move from where we are right now to a world that works for everyone. Number 6, take the time to tie the threads together. The invitation is to be willing to look at the bigger picture through spiritual eyes. Be willing to loosen our grip on our own ideas, on our own thoughts, on our own beliefs, and be willing to listen to another thought, another idea, or another belief. Number 7, ultimately stop seeing the other. It might come as a shock to you, but it would behoove us to remember that each of us is the other to someone else. How we treat each other should be based on how we want to be treated. With kindness, with respect, with dignity, and with an open mind. The invitation is to recognize when our perception is based on some automatic thought process, based on some belief that actually no longer serves the life that we want to be living. Seeing others as the other is just a way of seeing. We can choose a different way to see them. We have dominion over that. We can choose a different way to see them. The bottom line is that we are all part of one big community, one race, the human race. And the only way that we will ever heal is to recognize and to live by this truth. Reverend Dr. Ken Gordon says of Centers for Spiritual Living, this is the overarching body of which we are a part of. He is the spiritual director. He says, our purpose in this teaching is to awaken humanity to its spiritual magnificence. And the only way that we will ever be able to do that is to awaken our own selves first. Our vision for this teaching is a world that works for everyone. And to do that, we must begin to view the world as working in perfection. And to understand what we see in the world around us is indeed Spirit itself, holding our hand and walking us into a new way of being and a new way of loving. This is our opportunity. This is our time. And only those that can expand the law in that direction will be able to motivate the change that this world needs. Please repeat after me. Today, I choose to remember my connection with everything and everyone. Today, I choose to remember my connection with everything and everyone. Today, I choose to break down the barriers between us. Today, I choose to break down the barriers between us. Today, I choose to open my arms to the entire world.
Today, I choose to open my arms to the entire world.
And so it is.
And so it is.
And so it is. I invite you to turn within. And as I do so, I am so completely aware of the power and presence of God that is within me and surrounding me. I know that it is the very essence of peace and unity, compassion, unconditional love. I know that it is the golden thread that weaves itself throughout all of life, connecting us one to each other, individually and collectively as communities and states and countries. I know that while it appears on the outside to look as though there are others, that there is no other, that each of us is a unique and divine expression of the one, that there is nothing that can change that or divide that, that truly we are all children of God. And it is from that place of unity, that deep and abiding connection with life, with each other, and with God itself, that I speak these words about and for each of us today. Truly knowing that there is a way that we can live our lives from a deep awareness of our oneness, from a willingness to take the time to know each other, to take the time to hear each other's stories, to take the time to walk in each other's shoes. And what I know to be true, that as we do that, love soothes the way, makes the crooked places straight, allows for us to come together to create value and meaning from the diversity of thoughts, from the diversity of people, from the diversity of forces, from the diversity of perspectives, to create out of that something that works for everyone. I know that this is possible, and I claim ease and grace around it for each of us. And what I know is that we support each other here at this community on this journey, that we remind each other of the truth, that we see each other as the divine beings that we are, and what a great place to start. Knowing that as we get it right here, that we touch other lives and change their lives, and they look inside, they take the time to know us, and they want more of that. They want that in their lives, and then it just expands. This is how we create a world that works for everyone, by opening our arms to the entire world. I'm so grateful to know this truth and to speak these words. So grateful for the power of prayer, knowing that these words are loosed into a law that only ever says yes. And so I speak them and I release them with love and gratitude and full expectation of their manifestation. I invite each of us to anchor it for ourselves and for each other, simply by saying, "And so it is." Amen. Amen.